Hey, thanks for checking in again this week. We've been looking at a study recently that has honestly grown my faith quite a bit. We are doing a look at the Old Testament and specifically the feasts and the fasts back there. And the question that we've been trying to wrestle with lately is, how does all that stuff affect us today? What's going on with these ancient feasts? Because there's 7 of them in the Old Testament that God gives the nation of Israel. And then we have to wonder, okay, so what are they exactly, like I said, but also what do they mean for Jesus? How is there a connection between what's going on in the Old Testament and then fast forward into the New Testament, Jesus, and then after Jesus, and is there a connection there? And then really, here we are in 2023, and these feasts that we're looking at in the Old Testament are 3,500 years old, right? So how do they connect to us? I mean, that's a completely different world. And so, like I said, I think what I have learned is the beauty of the story of God, and how there's so much interconnectivity between what God was doing as he introduced himself to the world through the nation of Israel, and then today as he seeks to introduce himself to the world through his followers called Christians. Right? And so this relationship idea, though, and that's one of the ones I want to hit on today. As I've been working my way through this series and thinking and learning, because it's been a stretch for me. I'm not Jewish. I didn't grow up in that world. I've studied a lot of scripture and I've studied a lot of history, but I'm still not Jewish, and I didn't have a huge grasp on these feasts. So having done that, looking now at the bigger scope of all these things, I just keep hearing relationships scream out. And yes, there's other things that we'll talk about and other things that we have talked about. But today, though, consider relationships. Consider here at Quabog Church, if you're connected to us at all, if you've listened to anything, if you come regularly, you're going to see that we say worship, connect, and serve a lot, right? Because our vision for our better future as a church, like where we headed, is that we want to be able to create a culture where individual people that come here, that watch online like this, whatever the thing may be, that we're building a culture where people see in their own lives that they can worship, right? That they can regularly commune with God. Because worship, as we define it, is focusing your life on the life giver. And that happens all the time, not just at church or churchy things. And then connection, that you're going to step into those messy places where God is at work. That happens in your life all the time. Like, are you willing to grow in a way that leads you to authentic relationship and connection with other people? That's messy. And then lastly, serve, that my relationship with God, my relationship with others, that's just going to drive me to want to be a servant of other people. That it's going to drive me to want to help other people, to be financially generous to other people. So again, tying all that back into these feasts. And even the law itself is that God desired relationship. And he wanted his people, I think he still wants us to know today who he is, and he doesn't want us to forget our relationship to him. And I think God invites us in to that kind of relationship, that kind of intentional relationship, because that's really, right? That's really what the feasts and the festivals are. They're doing very, very intentional things. You have to stop all work. You have to rest. You have to bring in offerings, to show gratitude. Like, Lord, everything I have is a gift from you. So here's a portion of it back. I just want to bless other people with what you've blessed me with. There's all these very hands-on things that, like, swirling around it all is relationship. And here's why I bring it up this week. Because if you've watched many of these midweek videos, you know that it's just a lot of it comes from me just thinking about what's going on in my life, or what I'm reading, or what I'm talking with people about, questions that I'm asked, stuff I'm learning through scripture or articles, all kinds of things. And sometimes it's just, hey, here's some extra thoughts on this sermon that we're on, or this series that we're on. And the reason I bring this up particularly is I want you to think about your own life and the relationships in your own life. Like, think about the quality of relationships that you have with people that don't go to work, every day with you. Think about the quality of relationships you have with your family, or maybe like a fellow student if you're in school. Like, do you have a handful of relationships, maybe like 3 relationships that are pretty close to you? And then, like, how those relationships that are close to you, like, are those like deep relationships? Like, what kind of stuff do you talk about with those people? You know, like, do you have people that you can really lean into with that, like, that weird, embarrassing stuff, those questions, those doubts that you have, the issues that you're hoping nobody finds out about? Like, do you have somebody like that in your life? You know what I'm saying? Because just listening to the radio, or listening to podcasts rather, and listening to a lot of different things lately, it's like, man, we are hurting. We are hurting for real, genuine relationships, because I honestly believe that that's what we were built for. We were made for relationship. We were made for connection. That's why it's part of our vision statement here, because God made us to be in relationship with him, but then he also made us to live in those messy spaces with other people. And we need one another. And I think that that is what you're seeing too, being almost screamed in these feasts and these festivals. God is like, I want you to come into communion with me and relationship with me. And you're going to do that as a nation, as a people. You're going to have shared identity, and you're going to have a shared story. And it's why 3,500 years later, Jews are still celebrating these things. It's a shared identity. And I do believe that God calls us into that kind of living, so that we actually have like real relationship. And that's a huge deal at our church, because being the church means being interconnected. It means worshiping together. It means connecting. And it means serving together. It means being on mission together, being a part of something bigger than yourself, and letting people into those messy areas in your life, because that's where healing and growth are going to come from. So I just, again, want to challenge you, and we've done that last couple of weeks during the sermons, but I really want to challenge you to think about your relationships and what God is trying to say and show us through these Old Testament feasts and festivals and things that, like, I don't know, I don't see how they connect, right? Because you've got the Feast of Trumpets we looked at, Yom Kippur, the Day of Atonement we looked at. After that, you've got the Festival of Booths that we just looked at last Sunday. Then we're going to be looking at Passover and the Feast of Unleavened Bread that kind of go together. And then you got the Feast of First Fruits. And then you've got the Feast of Weeks, or Pentecost, after that. And we're going to look at all these, but I mean, look how God had them doing it. They're in community. Community is messy. They're doing it in relationship. Relationship is messy. But God says, this is how I want you to have this shared experience, this shared story, because you need each other. You need me, certainly, God's saying, but you need each other as well. So I want you to just think about that this week. Like, who in your life, like, if you're curious about God, if you're open to God, if you're all in with God, do you have people that are in your life that are like all in for you, right? That people that love God and are willing to love others and willing to be that Christ-like person in your life? Like, do you have like those kind of spiritual, like deep spiritual connections? Because we absolutely need them. I do. I have to have people in my life that, and some of them don't even live in this state. Matter of fact, a couple of them don't. A couple of my closest friends don't live in this state, but they're still people I can reach out to with just a text if I'm struggling, or I can call them whenever I want, and they'll listen to me. We need those people, right? We absolutely got to have them. So that's my thought for this week. Just check your relationships, see where you are, be willing to be bold in that way, and be willing to be vulnerable in that way with God and with other people, because it's part of who we are and part of how we're made, right? So each week we do these things, hopefully to be a blessing to you, hopefully to give you something to talk with people about, think about, maybe use this to share with somebody that could just use this insight or something like that. So it really helps us out to get a message of hope out, a message that's different from what the world has out there. So if this is helpful for you, we ask you to like it, share it with somebody, repost it, wherever it is that you're viewing this, because we really believe in the message and the hope that's found in Jesus Christ. All right, so we'll see you next time. Hopefully we'll see you on a Sunday. If you stop by and you've never visited before, make sure you come grab me, all right, and say hello.